In 1897, a ghost took the stand in a murder trial, and the jury believed her. What she revealed was so shocking, it led to a conviction. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll uncover the spine-chilling story of the Greenbrier Ghost and how she solved her own murder from beyond the grave. Greenbrier County, West Virginia in 1897 was a quiet, close-knit community where life was governed by the rhythms of nature and the traditions of the time. The Appalachian region, with its rolling hills and dense forests, was steeped in folklore and superstition. Stories of spirits and omens were as much a part of daily life as church gatherings and harvest festivals. In this rural landscape, a belief in the supernatural often intersected with the deeply religious values of its people, creating a unique cultural tapestry. Elva Zona Heaster, known to everyone as Zona, was a young woman who embodied the spirit of the area. She had a striking presence, with her molasses-brown eyes and long, silk-like hair. Zona was known for her free-spirited nature, a trait that set her apart in a community where conformity was often expected. Her life had not been without its challenges. At the age of 18, she had a child out of wedlock, a scandalous event in a deeply conservative society. Despite the whispers and judgment from her neighbors, Zona carried herself with resilience, determined to find happiness. In the fall of 1896, Zona's life took an unexpected turn. A new face appeared in Greenbrier County, Erasmus Edward Shue, a tall and handsome blacksmith with ocean blue eyes and an enigmatic charm. Edward, who went by the nickname Trout, had recently arrived in the area seeking work and a fresh start. He quickly made an impression with his skill at the forge and his striking appearance. Zona was captivated by him, and their whirlwind romance became the talk of the town. By November of that year, they were married in a small ceremony at the Old Methodist Church in Livesay's Mill. For Zona, it seemed like a new beginning. She and Edward moved into a modest two-story home near Sewell Mountain. Edward worked hard at his trade, and Zona took care of their household. Yet, not everyone was convinced of the marriage's blissful appearance. Mary Jane Heaster, Zona's mother, had misgivings about Edward from the start. She had an unshakable feeling that something about him wasn't right. Edward's past was a mystery, and Mary Jane's instincts told her that her daughter might not be as safe as she appeared. On the morning of January 23, 1897, Edward Shue arrived at the home of his neighbor, Martha Jones, and asked if her son, 11-year-old Anderson Jones, could run an errand for him. Edward claimed that Zona wasn't feeling well and needed help with chores. Anderson, who often did odd jobs for the Shues, had other commitments that morning. But Edward returned multiple times, growing more insistent with each visit. Finally, around 1 p.m., Anderson agreed to go to the Shue residence. He reported that he felt something was wrong as all the doors were closed, and there was an unsettling air about the place. Upon reaching the steps, Anderson noticed a trail of blood, which scared him. He knocked on the door but received no response. Finding it unlocked, he entered the kitchen, where he saw the blood trail continuing to the dining room door, which was also closed. After knocking again and getting no answer, Anderson opened the dining room door and stumbled over Zona's body. He described her as stretched out on the floor, looking up at him with wide open eyes, her face seemingly frozen in a laughing expression. He was frightened but touched her, finding her stiff and cold. Anderson ran from the house to tell Aunt Martha that Mrs. Shue is dead. Edward was at the blacksmith shop when Anderson arrived with the grim news. Upon hearing it, Edward let out a wail and immediately ran toward the house, accompanied by his boss, Charles Tapscott. By the time Dr. George Knapp arrived to examine Zona, Edward had already moved her body to the upstairs bedroom. He had dressed her in a high-necked dress, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and arranged her on the bed as though she were merely asleep. Edward cradled her head, rocking back and forth in visible grief. His refusal to let anyone near her head struck Dr. Knapp as odd, but the doctor performed only a cursory examination, given Edward's emotional state. Dr. Knapp declared the cause of death to be an everlasting faint, a term used to describe sudden heart failure. Later, he amended the cause to complications from childbirth, though there was no evidence that Zona was pregnant. The case was closed without further investigation. Zona's body was prepared for burial the following day, and Edward's behavior at the funeral only deepened the unease felt by those around him. At the funeral, held at the Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery, Edward stayed by Zona's casket, his demeanor alternating between inconsolable grief and an unnerving vigilance. He insisted on arranging her body in the coffin himself, using a folded sheet and clothing to prop up her head and prevent anyone from getting too close. Mary Jane Heaster, watching her son-in-law's peculiar behavior, felt her suspicions grow. She had never trusted Edward, and now her unease turned to outright alarm. After the funeral, Mary Jane took home a sheet that had been used to line Zona's coffin. When she attempted to wash it, the water turned a vivid red, as though soaked with blood. No amount of scrubbing could remove the stain. To Mary Jane, this was a sign, a message from her daughter that something was terribly wrong. She began to pray fervently for answers, asking God to reveal the truth about Zona's death. One night, as Mary Jane lay in bed, a light reportedly appeared in her room. It grew brighter and brighter until it coalesced into a human form. It was Zona. Over the next 4 nights, Zona's ghost would visit her mother, each time revealing more about the circumstances of her death. The young woman's story was one of betrayal, violence, and a desperate plea for justice. Mary Jane, now armed with this otherworldly testimony, resolved to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Mary Jane Heaster, now convinced that her daughter had been murdered, began sharing her experiences with Zona's ghost. At first, neighbors dismissed her as a grieving mother, her mind clouded by sorrow. But Mary Jane was resolute. She described in vivid detail how Zona had appeared to her over 4 nights. The ghost's form was unmistakable, her features clear, her voice calm but filled with urgency. Zona's message was chilling. Edward had killed her in a fit of rage, grabbing her by the throat and snapping her neck. To prove it, the ghost turned her head completely around, an image that left Mary Jane shaken but determined. Zona's ghost also described the events leading up to her death. Edward had flown into a violent rage over something trivial, her failure to cook meat for supper. As Mary Jane recounted this story, she revealed details about the Shue's home and Zona's final moments that she could not have known without having been there herself. This knowledge, combined with Edward's odd behavior and the blood-stained sheet, began to sway the community. Suspicion turned into whispers, and whispers grew louder. Mary Jane's persistence led her to the office of John Alfred Preston, the local prosecutor. At first, Preston was skeptical. Ghost stories were hardly a foundation for legal action. But Mary Jane's unwavering conviction and the specific details Zona's ghost had shared began to chip away at his doubt. Preston agreed to investigate, starting with a conversation with Dr. Knapp. The doctor admitted that his initial examination of Zona's body had been rushed and incomplete due to Edward's interference. This revelation, coupled with Mary Jane's insistence, convinced Preston to order Zona's body exhumed for a proper autopsy. On February 22, 1897, a small group gathered at the cemetery to witness the exhumation. Edward Shue, visibly nervous, protested the decision, but could do nothing to stop it. Zona's body was transported to a one-room schoolhouse where Dr. Knapp, along with 2 other physicians, conducted the autopsy. For 3 days, they examined her remains, and their findings shocked the community. Zona's neck had been broken between the first and second vertebrae. Her windpipe was crushed, and there were distinct finger-shaped bruises around her throat. The injuries were consistent with strangulation, aligning perfectly with the ghost's account. When the results of the autopsy were made public, Edward's behavior became the focus of scrutiny. His insistence on dressing Zona's body, his refusal to let anyone near her neck, and his overprotective demeanor at the funeral now seemed less like grief and more like a calculated effort to hide evidence. Edward was arrested and charged with murder. The case was set to go to trial, and the story of Zona's ghost spread like wildfire. In June 1897, the trial of Edward Shue began in the Greenbrier County courthouse. The prosecution, led by John Preston, relied heavily on the physical evidence from the autopsy and Edward's suspicious behavior. They avoided directly mentioning the ghost, knowing it would be dismissed as hearsay. Instead, they focused on Edward's history. Witnesses testified about his violent tendencies, including accounts from his first wife, who had divorced him for abuse, and rumors surrounding the mysterious death of his second wife. Edward's past painted a picture of a man capable of extreme violence. The defense, in an attempt to discredit Mary Jane Heaster, brought up the ghost story during cross-examination. They hoped to portray her as superstitious and unreliable. But Mary Jane held her ground, recounting her visions with unwavering certainty. She described Zona's visits in detail, from the light that preceded her appearance to the exact words her daughter had spoken. Her testimony captivated the courtroom, and though the judge instructed the jury to disregard the supernatural elements, the story left an indelible impression. As the trial unfolded, Edward's own testimony only added to the drama. He claimed innocence, insisting he loved Zona and would never harm her, but his demeanor and evasive answers worked against him. He came across as arrogant and unrepentant, even making the bizarre statement that he hoped to marry 7 women in his lifetime. The jury, already swayed by the autopsy findings and Mary Jane's testimony, found his performance unconvincing. The courtroom was a battleground of skepticism and belief, science and the supernatural. While the ghost's testimony was not officially admissible, it had undeniably influenced the proceedings. The physical evidence corroborated the ghost's claims, creating a narrative that was difficult to ignore. As the trial drew to a close, the community waited anxiously for the verdict, knowing the stakes were not just about justice for Zona, but also about the clash between reason and the unexplainable. On July 11, 1897, after deliberating for little more than an hour, the jury returned with their verdict. Edward Shue was guilty of first-degree murder. The decision was clear, though not unanimous on the question of his punishment. While most jurors favored the death penalty, a few hesitated, leading to a sentence of life imprisonment instead. The courtroom buzzed with the weight of the decision. Justice had been served, not just by the evidence presented, but, many believed, by the intervention of a restless spirit. Edward remained defiant, proclaiming his innocence even as he was led away in shackles. Yet his demeanor throughout the trial, arrogant, evasive, and at times chillingly indifferent, had sealed his fate in the eyes of the community. The autopsy findings and Mary Jane Heaster's unshakable testimony had exposed him as a violent man with a dark past. The courtroom drama became a national sensation. Newspapers reported the story of the Greenbrier Ghost, marveling at how the testimony of a spirit had contributed to the conviction of a murderer. Though the judge had instructed the jury to disregard the supernatural elements, the ghost's story lingered in the public imagination, adding a layer of mystique to an already extraordinary case. Edward Shue was sent to the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, where he lived out his remaining years. In 1900, he succumbed to an epidemic sweeping through the prison, dying alone and unremarked in an unmarked grave. For many in Greenbrier County, his death marked the final chapter in a tragic and eerie tale. Mary Jane Heaster, however, found solace in the outcome. She believed wholeheartedly that her daughter's spirit had intervened to ensure justice was served. Zona's ghost never visited her again, a sign, Mary Jane felt, that her daughter's soul was finally at peace. Mary Jane lived out her days quietly in Greenbrier County, passing away in 1916. She was buried near Zona in the family plot, a testament to their unbreakable bond. The community, too, grappled with the implications of the case. It was a story that blended science and superstition, logic and faith, and it left an indelible mark on the region's folklore. For some, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked anger and violence. For others, it was proof of the enduring power of a mother's love and the mysterious forces that connect the living and the dead. The story of the Greenbrier Ghost became a legend, one that transcended its time and place. It is remembered as the only known case in American history where the testimony of a ghost helped to convict a murderer. Historical markers in Greenbrier County commemorate the event, and the tale has been retold in books, plays, and documentaries. It continues to captivate audiences, blending elements of true crime and the paranormal. The case raises questions that remain unanswered. Was it truly Zona's ghost that appeared to Mary Jane, or was it a mother's intuition manifesting in an extraordinary way? Could Mary Jane have pieced together the truth from subtle clues she had observed, subconsciously weaving them into a vivid story of a ghostly visitation? Or was it something beyond explanation, a bridge between worlds, forged by love and a desire for justice? As the years passed, the legend of the Greenbrier Ghost became a cornerstone of Appalachian folklore. It sparked debates about the nature of truth and justice, the power of belief, and the limits of the legal system. Could other spirits like Zona be waiting to tell their stories? Might there be other cases where the supernatural intersects with the pursuit of justice? The story of the Greenbrier Ghost leaves the door open for further exploration, a reminder that some mysteries linger, defying time and reason. And that's the haunting tale of the Greenbrier Ghost, a story where justice transcended the boundaries of life and death. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the events in Greenbrier County remind us of the lengths love and determination can go to uncover the truth. Was it a mother's intuition, divine intervention, or something otherworldly? We'll leave that for you to decide. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of mystery, true crime, and the unexplained, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chilling tale. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Zona's ghost really appeared to her mother? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep exploring the unknown.